Earlier, I pointed toward a tension that rarely feels like a cost. It usually feels like time. Time to think, time to consider, time to get it right. From the outside, that looks responsible, measured, deliberate. But underneath that posture, something quieter begins to accumulate. Not delayed, not hesitation in the way that is usually described, something else. The measure of carrying what has not yet been decided. And while that pressure is carried, it does not remain neutral. This shows up first in how decisions are held. A choice that sits longer than it needs to. Conversations encircle it. Language adjusts around it. It stays hidden because nothing has visibly gone wrong. Work continues. Meetings happen. Progress appears intact. From the outside, it looks like patience. From the inside, something begins to spread. Energy starts attaching to the undecided. A leader revisits the same thought multiple times, not to refine it, but because it remains unresolved. Time moves, but the decision does not. The cost begins to show up indirectly. Attention fragments, focus shifts slightly off center. Other decisions begin to slow. Not because they're unclear, but because something larger remains open. And it keeps going. Because there's no immediate consequence, no visible penalty. The cost doesn't arrive as disruption. It arrives as weight. Weight that gets carried quietly, crosses everything else. What are you already paying for that you have not yet decided? Now, if we were live in a room where having conversations, people were speaking, we'll start at this particular point, start noticing some patterns beginning to surface. People start describing things. Some would describe decisions that have been present for longer than they expected. Others would notice, how they return to the same question without moving it forward. Someone might recognize, how much of their attention is tied up in something else that has not been resolved. Another might describe a subtle tension that follows them from one meeting to the next. There will be stories of leaders who appear decisive externally while carrying one or two decisions that remain open internally. of teams adjusting around something unspoken. Some would notice that smaller decisions begin to feel heavier than the larger ones remain untouched. Others will recognize, a quiet fatigue that does not come with a workload, but from carrying something incomplete. And no one would call it avoidance. They will call it consideration. And over time, the interpretation allows it to remain. The pattern would sound reasonable. That's why they persist. And this tension doesn't need to be resolved right here on this particular episode. It doesn't even require a decision on this particular episode. You could carry it back with you without forcing closure. Just notice where something remains open and continues to draw from you. And let whatever belongs to that decision arrive in its own time.